And with Trump's tariffs coming in on everywhere in the world, and Tom Palmer told me last night that the only country he didn't place tariffs on was Russia.
That's a joke. Yeah.
Do you think that countries should respond with tariffs as retaliatory tariffs, or do you think that we should just free trade all the way?
Yeah, now it gets tricky because I know the temptation is there. We want to punch back, but we have to realize that a trade war is a kind of war where we're standing in line, taking turns, punching ourselves in the face as hard as possible. And the key to winning a trade war is not to punch yourself in the face. We can see that now with how the IMF and banks are constantly changing their forecasts for GDP around the world. The ones that suffer the most are the United States. They suffer the most. And if they deny themselves access to the brains and the hard work and goods and services of other countries, should we do the same? I'm not sure. Yes, we should send some kind of signal, but I think it should be more symbolical than otherwise, because otherwise we just hurt ourselves and our businesses. So perhaps, and I can agree, okay, if you have to do some sort of tariffs, do it on something that we can find easy supplies from elsewhere rather than anything big and qualitatively important. During the Great Depression, America implemented the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. They were disastrous, not necessarily because of the tariffs themselves, but because Europe responded with the same kind of tariffs. And that ended up in this cycle of retaliatory tariffs, which led to a decline of world trade by some 2/3 in just 4 years. That was the nightmare. We shouldn't go, and that created mass unemployment and destroyed many democratic governments in Europe. So that's where we don't want to end up, in that terrible cycle. Let Trump punch himself in the face again and again, and hopefully then businesses in the US and customers in the US will realize that's not a good thing, and hopefully Trump will in the end get some FOMO, sort of fear of missing out this great trade that everybody else is doing.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that I think a lot of people miss out on, that a tariff is a tax on your own people, because it's not the US trading, it's individuals within the US trading with individuals elsewhere. And I think that's one of the amazing things about globalization, is that you can trade with people. I think, if you have shearer scissors that people who don't speak the same language can communicate to get a woolen coat, that someone has to find the steel, that someone has to forge the shears, someone has to transport it. And that's one of the amazing things that globalization has brought us.
Yeah, it's a miracle of cooperation. And we shouldn't take it for granted. We should actually lend it some thought and some gratitude.
Exactly. One of the models that you talked about in The Mirage of Swedish Socialism was the 3 steps. So that people have socialism, and then there's the excuses, and then there's, that wasn't real socialism. Do you think this model could be applied to state socialism, that is the tariffs, with Trump's tariffs? So people say, the US is going to be great again because we're going to put tariffs in China and we're going to stop them.
That's a great point. I haven't thought of that. But yes, I can see something similar happening. You know how happy they all were, the MAGA crowd initially. Now we will be the strongest economy on the planet. Just look at those tariffs. And then obviously they lose some $6 trillion of market capitalization of the US businesses. And it's like, and then the excuses come, some of them being sort of, only the rich people invest in stock markets, and who needs that stuff anyway? And now it's time for sacrifice rather than, it's like, right? You said this would make us rich, and now you're saying, and then other excuses like, it's other countries cheating, and it's their retaliatory tariffs. That's the only reason why it doesn't work. And some disloyal. You even heard this from Trump. I think this is the most hilarious. He said, "This is the globalist markets who don't want America to succeed. That's why they take their money out of the US stock market." Well, they're actually in it for the money. If they thought that this would be successful, they would invest. So yes, we're in the excuses phase. So now the question is, eventually, will we end up in a couple of months of people saying, oh, that wasn't real protectionism. It was done in the wrong way.
Yes.
They used the wrong ChatGPT formula to calculate the tariffs. We can do it again in a new, smarter way. I'm sure that'll happen.
Yes, I'm sure Trump thinks that McKinley didn't put on tariffs correctly.
That's right, exactly. And McKinley actually changed his mind eventually.
Really?
You know, his last speech in Buffalo in September 1901, Trump's great hero, the protectionist President McKinley, said, the time for isolation is over. The important thing now is to expand business and our trade relationships. And this is the exact quote, and trade wars are unprofitable. So if only Trump had the attention span to see what McKinley did after his 2 first years in the White House, he'd get another lesson.
Exactly. And one of the points that Lord Hannan makes is that the 3 reasons that Trump gave for protectionism or for his tariffs, that it's a negotiating tactic, it will make us richer, it will make China poorer, is that if you take one of those reasons, the other 2 reasons don't work.
Exactly. It's very confusing.
Yeah. It's a tactic, confusion by stupidity.
Yeah. And that should always make you concerned when you hear someone explaining that this is a policy that will solve all problems. Then you realize that this is something else entirely, because you can't do contradictory stuff at the same time.
Exactly, and that's one of the most things about globalization. I don't believe you claim that globalization solves all problems. Not everyone wins to the same extent as other people do, but it's a rising tide that it brings most people up. And it's one of the things that, like we talked about before, the lessons that people can take is that the UK, the US, Sweden, other examples where they've liberalised, they've deregulated, that they've allowed people to invest and start businesses, that's when they've had economic growth, that's when people are healthier. One of the colleagues, Marion Tooby, says, if you think the past was so much better, how was dentistry?
Yeah, exactly. And 130,000 people were raised out of extreme poverty every day for 25 years during this era of globalization. I mean, had that been a socialist project, I'm sure it would have been plastered on every T-shirt and every newspaper every day of the week. But now it just happened because millions and millions of people just looked at ways of trying to make their lives a little bit better by doing things a little bit smarter, faster, or cheaper today than they did yesterday. That's what global capitalism is about. And it's wonderful.